We've all got scars, some on the outside and some on the inside. But we can't be defined by our scars. I've spoken with some extraordinary people about how they've become empowered by their scars. This is I've Got Scars, baby.
So I am so excited right now about my next guest. And man, you have quite the story. You are doing so much in the community. Right now, we have educator, speaker, consultant, and author of What Success Looks Like: Successful Strategies to Increase Graduation Rates for Young Men of Color. Okay, I feel like I'm so happy. I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm so happy that that is a book that you have written, because I feel like that is something that absolutely needs to happen in our communities. And today we are talking about examining lowered expectations for Black youth. Thank you so much, Dr. Marck Abraham. I'm so happy to have you here today. And yes, we're going to go ahead and talk. We're going to have a conversation on today about, we're talking about young men, young Black men, and how we are looking at them these days. Like, what are the expectations? What are we seeing in our men? And what do we expect to see in our men? And we're going to talk about that. But you have a very interesting story, and we're going to talk about your story.
Well, I want to say thank you for having me on your podcast, and thank you for the ones that are watching. I called her and moved the time up by an hour, and she accommodated me, even though she's on the West Coast and it's early morning for her. So I want to say thank you for doing that for me.
Not a problem. He was like, look, put your face on, because you ain't got to do nothing but the waist up. Just get it together. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to get it together. So I had to rush.
You look amazing. So you did a good job.
Thank you so much. So yes, let's talk about your story, because when you and I spoke, I was like, wow. So going back to childhood, going back to growing up, and what was going on in your household?
That's a broad question. I think what might be easier is if we kind of narrow it down a little bit. So let me just try to help bring some context to why you even decided that you wanted to even interview me, so people won't be like, you just got this brother on just for no reason. So I guess a little bit of my story is, I came from a very abusive household.
Mm-hmm.
I have I detail this out in the book, but I had a stepdad that was very abusive. I mean, he used to beat my mama. The trauma that happens to young people when they see their parents fight,
Mm-hmm.
when they hear violence in the home, when a child is, I'm not against spanking your child. I'm against beating your child.
Yeah.
I'm against you frustrated because you're not where you're supposed to be, or you don't feel like you're supposed to be in your life, so that a child does something like drop juice on the ground and you take that as a complete, time to just kill a child for doing something that's very minute. I'm totally against the psychological abuse of children. So I was called dumb and stupid and just all these names in the book that made me really question my intellect. So when we talk about Black children, I'm a firm proponent of sometimes I see parents do this. They'll say something like, "You're so lazy, but you're so dumb," and you're trying to motivate them to be something. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you're calling them dumb because you want them to go do something else. Like you need to stop acting dumb, or you need to stop acting stupid. But what that does is, and what that child hears is that I'm dumb and I'm not smart and I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. So now they have that inferiority complex. I'm stupid in the house a lot.
Mm-hmm.
it manifests itself in school.
Yeah.
It manifests itself in a lack of. So, it's a lot, that I've had to overcome, and I'm thankful that God, I don't look like what I've been through.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is why we can't judge books by their cover. We can't just say, hey, oh, he's a doctor, he's a former principal, he's a business owner, he must have came from a 2-parent family household, he must have had that suburban life, and that's why he or she is successful. You don't know my story until you open up the book and say, hey, what did this young man have to go through to persevere to get to where he's at? But let's I don't want to just keep talking and bore your guests, but let's wherever.
No. Yeah, no. I think it's great, and it's best to have context in this conversation so people understand your background. They understand that this is not you didn't just come from the best of circumstances, because a lot of people don't come from the most congenial circumstances. They come from some stuff and they're like, I don't know if I can get to becoming a doctor. I don't know if I can get to a certain space because this is where I come from. So that's why I really wanted to have this conversation. So for you,
can I say this? Can I say this when you go on? Because I feel it's in my spirit. I think sometimes people put limitations on children also. Right, we see them come into the school with the without daddy being in the house, so then we put a limitation on them. And if you would have saw me at 10 and 9 and 8 and lack of vocabulary, struggled with literacy, couldn't articulate myself, 1.4 GPA my first year of college. If you would have seen me, you would have said you would never have said, this is going to be a principal, this is going to be an author, this is going to be a national consultant. So what I try to tell people, even parents, when you're working with your child, you don't know yet the purpose God put that young person on this earth. So don't put a cap on their possibility, on their, don't try to limit them. Tell them still they can be anything that they want to be. And so that's why I wrote the book. And that's why I've done the work, is to really let people know that, our young black males can do anything. I mean, the sky's the limit. It doesn't matter the background that they came from. It don't matter the circumstances they came from. If they have someone that believes in them, put a little bit of hope in them, they can do anything.
And I love that you said that. For you and your experience, do you feel because you were told that, why are you being lazy? You're not smart. You're, all these things. Do you feel like growing up for you that it was just more of a lack of confidence that was difficult early on for you? Was it just a lack of confidence, or do you feel like it was actually ability in any type of way?
I think it was, I think it was the thought process, so I'm a Bible reading man. I'm a praying man. And the Bible talks about, as a man thinking in his heart, so is he. There's a book that I enjoy called Think and Grow Rich. And he said, if you believe you can, you can. Carter G. Woodson, in the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, he said, if you have somebody believe that they're inferior, you don't have to create a back door. If there was no door there, they will create one just because of that thought process. So I was being told that I was nothing.
Yeah.
I was being told that I wasn't smart. If you hear that you're stupid every single day in your young age, you actually start to believe in it. I posted something the other day. I said, you're telling me that kids can believe in the Tooth Fairy, Superman, X-Man, Boogeyman. They can believe in all these fictional characters, but they can't believe that they're brilliant.
Okay.
See, it's because the adults in their lives they're not telling them that they're brilliant. Because what will happen is, I'm answering your question, if someone would have told me every single day that I was brilliant, that I'm wonderful, that I have a bright future, I would have nothing else to lean on. That would be the most impactful thing for me, and I would have manifest. And thank God that I had people in my life that interceded, because I had football coaches that interceded. I had teachers that interceded. I had pastors that interceded, that started to help change my paradigm. And it was until my paradigm changed, I could not be the man that you see here on this Zoom, sitting here in front of you with the camera looking up, so I could take that dominant role you're talking. We practiced it, y'all. I'm out here looking swole on the camera.
Extra swole, okay? I'm not that too. You better go ahead. So no, I love that you said that, because I think it's like you have to. Everything in life comes from your belief, your knowing. It's an inner thing. It really is. Circumstances, outward things really don't matter as much as we think that they do. And I'm so glad that you said that. And I think that's education that we have to give our children, is that circumstances on the outside, anything outside of you is malleable. Anything outside of you can change. And the way you change the outside things is by changing whatever's going on in there. And I think that if we gave that education, we spoke life to our children, I agree with you, then things would shift. So as it pertains to the shifting, because I know that in high school you were playing football, and do you feel like for you, as a big strapping guy, do you feel like people just automatically assumed, okay, you should go play sports because you're a big strapping guy? And do you feel like people did not invest in you intellectually growing up at all?
So you asked some powerful things. I mean, it is, and so I'm going to try to answer them to the best of my ability. When we think about Black boys and we think about young men of color, think about it. Mm-hmm. When we think about the pigmentation in our skin and the beauty that we have, when the system looks at us, they put us in a category. But they look at us and they say either he's going to be an athlete, he's going to be a rapper, or we want to put him in slavery. I mean, prison. Mm-hmm. See, that's the reality of institutionalized racism. Because remember, when Black men got to this country, they didn't bring us here so that we can be lawyers, doctors, scientists. Although we come from lawyers, I'm not lawyers. We come from scientists and mathematicians and where we were from, and we were kidnapped and brought here. But in this country, when we see Black men, when we see young Black men, there is a propensity to say that young man is either going to be an athlete, he's going to be a dancer, he's going to be an entertainer. Think about it. When you look at young men of color, we look at them, and I'm not talking to you, I'm just talking to the people who's listening to this, who's going to say, I don't believe that. Think about it. Every time you see a young Black man, you go say, oh, that's going to be the next LeBron James or the next basketball player. Why does everything have to do with us got to be for your entertainment?
Okay. Oh, I get it.
So because we don't want to listen. So the system was not created into valuing my intellect. Mm-hmm. The system was not created in seeing me as an intellect. Even now, when people see me around, they don't look at me and say, oh, that's a doctor or that's an author. Mm-hmm. They say, oh, did you play football? Because that's what we kind of...
Yeah, you've been conditioned.
We conditioned to think that way. So even when you ask young Black boys now, you say, hey, what do you want me to grow up when you grow up? They say, well, I want to be a rapper, or I want to be a basketball player, I want to be a football player. That does not happen by mistake. Mm-mm. And that's not happening by happenstance. That's happening by design.
Yeah.
So, and we have to be able to address that and tackle that. So to answer your question, no, there was not an investment in my intellect. I had to go and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in my intellect. I didn't learn how to write. I had to teach myself how to write. My freshman year of college. See, just look how crazy this system is. My freshman year in college, I had a 1.4 grade point average. I would try to leave classes that had me write because I couldn't write. My literacy was so low. But I was in college. How did I even make it there? But because I was a football player, what they do for our athletes, we pass them along. We lower the standard so much. Why? Because my body was used to make the system money.
Oh my
so
God.
That happens to Black men all the time. So this is why I say, stop pretending like we don't know how to get Black men through the system, because we do. When we see value in their Black skin with regards to athletics, when we see them as athletes or dancers or entertainers, then we know how to get them through. But when they're just simply a young man that says, I want to be a scientist, then we disregard them. So I made it through all the way through high school, all the way through middle school, all the way through elementary. But because I played a sport, they got me through. The system got me through because they said, we need this Black man to make us more money. So consequently, I had issues with literacy, had issues with reading, had issues with writing. And it was only to my freshman year, I prayed out to God, tears in my eyes. At 1.4 GPA, it was difficult. I started following this pastor, and I would write his sermons down. I wasn't writing to learn how to write. I was writing it because I was just trying to get closer to God. Yeah. But in the midst of it, I taught myself how to write an introduction, a thesis statement, a body, and conclusion. I had to teach myself how to write in the midst of college, and it only got refined and better the more education I got and the more people that supported me through that process. But it was not an investment in me. The school system did not invest in me. They didn't care enough to invest in me as an intellect, but as an athlete, yes, not as an intellect.
Wow. I have a question, and because I'm a believer that unfortunately, as like men and their emotions are not, like, we don't talk a lot about that. And men aren't really encouraged to speak about their feelings about things. So I want to ask, knowing that this is what was happening to you, how did that make you feel about yourself?
Well, you don't know, right? You don't know this is happening until you get out of it and then you realize what has happened. You have to get outside the matrix, right? It's the red or blue pill, right? You got to get outside the matrix and then look at it as a system, because it's hard to see. It's hard to see the forest while you're in the trees, right? You're in it, so it's hard to see what's really transpiring. It's only until you pull yourself out and then you start to read and then you start to see a correlation, what's happening with other young men of color and what's happening with Black males around the country. Think about it, like you talk to an officer. I talked to a Black officer here in New York. He was so adamant to tell me how bad the Black communities were. He said, well, you don't know what happens in the Black community. I may not, but what I do know is Black men only make up 6% of the country. We make up over 37% of the prison population. That's disproportionate. Statistically, it's impossible for that to happen. 6% should represent 6%. You can't say 6% represent 37%, or 13%, which is Black people, make up over 50% in the prison population. What does that mean? That means the system, police officers, are targeting us to put us in jail so that they keep the slavery system going. But the Black people, the Black men and women who wear that badge, because they're in it, they don't even have the wherewithal to pull themselves out of it to see what's going on. Why? Because they need a paycheck to pay Bank of America to keep their mortgage going.
Yeah. And then if you think about it, though, if you have a group of people who are impoverished, they're just trying to survive, you can't be, you know what I'm saying? You're just trying to make it. You're just trying to stay alive. Right. You're not thinking about thriving. You're not thinking about things that are, you're just thinking about the day to day. I'm just trying to make it through. And I don't think people understand that if you're in that kind of mentality, unfortunately, it's not always going to provide you with the most jovial life experience because you're just down, you're just in it. And I think that that's the thing too, is that just kind of how you described is that if there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of just you see your environment a certain way and you feel like, oh, I have to be that way too. And that's it, because some people just have never seen anything outside of what they see every day. And so, yeah, we can go on and on and on about all of that. But how did you get to a space mentally that you started to see, I am more than a football player. I am more than what I can do with my body. I am powerful. I am an intellectual. I am great at the things that I do. I have a purpose beyond this. How did you get to that space?
It didn't happen automatically. It didn't happen all at once, right? That's too much that's too much power for somebody to get all at once. And I want to liberate anyone that's watching. Yeah. Once you start to realize that you're more than your physical body, you are leading yourself to something very great. When you start to realize the answers to the world's problems are within you, you are positioning yourself for greatness. But let me say this: so it didn't just happen all at once. It happened through one pain and another pain and another pain. I think it crystallized itself, and I'm still a work in progress, but it started to become a little bit more clear when I got my doctorate degree. I think one of the big thing is once I started to read and started to really look at what was happening around the country and what was happening for people who look like me. See, it's like I have friends that were killed. I have friends that are in prison. I have friends, and sometimes you want to put the weight on the individual, not knowing that if the story is happening over and over and over and over again, then we have to start looking at the system. And I got that from, remember when we went through the mortgage crisis? Yeah. And all of these people got foreclosed on, and all these properties are foreclosed. On the first part, we started to say, well, these people didn't pay their mortgage, so they need to get foreclosed. But then we started to say, well, really what the problem was, there was predatory lending, which caused so many people to actually lose their homes. So we had to change our practice. Yeah. What I'm simply suggesting to the United States of America is that we have to change our practice. Because there's a reason why so many young men of color are not making it through the high school, let alone even having the opportunity to go to college. And then we imprison more people than almost anybody in the world. That's by design. Our best resource is slavery. We don't got no gold, we ain't got no oil, we got slavery. That's what we enslave people to make products for free. That's one of our best resources.
What do you feel like? Because, I understand the idea of something being done by design. I get that. How do you feel on a community level, on a family level, we can do the work that we need to do to empower our young men and women, of course, but how do we get them to focus in on what they need to focus in on instead of the outside stuff that is telling them other things? What's one of the best ways to do that?
I think that's a great question. I don't know if there's one best way to do that, right? So it's not just, hey, this is the silver bullet to have that happen. I think one of the bedrocks, though, for my success is a strong foundation in faith. I think you have to have a strong base in God. And I'm not saying religion. I'm saying God. Saying you start to show your children at a young age how to listen to the powerful voice on the inside of them.
I love that. Yeah.
So I think, because we're built with a conscience. We're built with a compass on the inside of us that tells us, don't do this. This is why baby before it touched something, look at you like, hey, that was wrong, little baby, right? So we're built with that on the inside of us. The more we can help our kids start to look within versus look without, and not feel like they need to be a part of everything that's going on in this world that is, often not favorable to us in general, the better off we'll be, because you want them to start to have something to hold on to. And then secondly, the next thing I would say is, we have to provide them with a connection to their past. See, one of the biggest things that when I find myself in real turmoil, I look back to my ancestors. I'm Haitian American. I look back to my ancestors in Haiti that fought and died to make sure that they won't be enslaved.
Yeah.
They're the first liberated country, first Black country to ever become free from the slave master. So I pull back on the strength of my ancestors. I look deep within myself and find the answers. So my first year as a principal, I got a vote of no confidence.
Yeah.
I was in the news, and they were looking at me and land-basing me, and I had to say, listen, I had to ask God. I said, God, why is this happening? And once He confirmed to me that it was not I was doing something wrong, but that I was doing something good, then I was at peace, and I kept going.
Yeah.
So I needed to look within to say what's happening and why is this happening without. So I think it's a continual state of having kids start to trust their own thought processes and not feel like they have to follow the crowd, because success is not a broad street. Success is a street that's very narrow, and not many people get there. So what we want to do is help them find that voice, but that starts with a parent who looks within and starts to be confident in their gut. Women, you'll have intuition say, I just knew he was cheating. You think? But you needed proof, and you needed all this other stuff. But God gave you that intuition for a reason. But the better we are listening to that gut and making decisions off of that versus making decisions off of what we see, because you said something. I say it like this: don't get distracted by the distractions when you have a goal. And secondly, fact and opinion changes, truth remains the same. So so that's what I say. So truth is always going to remain the same. Things around you will change, but truth will remain the same. So that's what I would say for the family to help us do better.
Can I tell you, I don't think you could have answered that better. I'm just going to say it. I don't think there's a better answer to that at all. And I mean that. I'm not even, that's not me gassing anybody up. That's just how I feel, because that is very true, because the answer is always in there. It's in there because God is in there, and God is going to tell you which way to go, what to do, all of that. And I think that we just have to learn to trust it, like you're saying, trusting it, obeying what it says, that little still small voice, however you want to refer to it. But you're absolutely right. And it's like, when this ain't right, this is not what I'm supposed to do, don't do it, and just be obedient to that. And I think that's just the best way to navigate life in general. And then I love the concept of you speaking life. When you were talking about one of the reasons why things were so rough for you is because life wasn't really spoken over you and to you. But speaking, even though something may not look like it might happen, it's like, no, everything is fantastic. You're amazing. You're beautiful. You're intelligent. You're all of these things. And I think when you speak life, you start to see life. If you speak death, you start to see death. So speak life and all these things. I think that's so powerful. I appreciate you so much for sharing your amazing story. Is there anything else that you would want to share? Any last minute somethings that you would want to share?
No, I think you hit it spot on. I used to, when I was a principal, I would have daily affirmations, and I would have my students say, I would have them make a statement every single day. And one of the statements I say, we're the best school in the land. And I would have them say, I'm the best because I believe I'm the best, and I work hard every single day to be my best. And I would have them go through that every single day, and people would get upset. They would say, why are you calling them the best? I seen that kid skipping. I seen that kid out in the halls. I seen that kid on the corner smoking weed. Why are you still calling them the best?
Yeah.
They need to get. And I said, you don't understand. There's something psychologically that happens to us when we start to speak life and positive affirmations 2-3 times a day. Because what happens is you start to, let me see how I say this. You start to challenge thoughts that you think are your thoughts. So that's that is the biggest trick of the enemy. The biggest trick of the devil is there's a thought that presents, and it presents in your voice. So you think it's your thought, but that's a thought that's going to lead you to somewhere that you don't need to be. So you have to take control and say, I'm going to speak life so that I can change my paradigm, and I'm going to keep the temperature set at this level so that I will ultimately see what I see on the inside of me. That is deep. And
I love that.
For people to you got to listen to that over and over again. But I'm telling you, when you start to speak affirmations, because negative thoughts disguise themselves as your thought. Negative thoughts.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes.
They put camouflage on, and it says, well, you can't do that. It's that thought that tries to creep up and just slightly suggest you can't do something. But you have to be the one that's in control. You're the author of your life. You got to be the one. You're the director of your movie. You got to be the one to say, I can do this, and I will do this, and then the whole universe will come into place so that you can be successful. So I say this story real quick. I was leaving a job making $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I was telling everybody I was leaving. And then it got to the end, and I said, oh, Lord Jesus, I can't do this. And the Lord said to me, he said, how is it that you expect the universe to believe your word if you don't even believe your word? Right? So you have to believe your own words. And so often we just take words for granted, and we don't actually appreciate what's coming out of our mouth. So it's imperative that we take control and ownership of our words and make a demand on the universe and make a demand on ourselves, but we got to keep it there.
You better go ahead and say it. You better speak. You better go ahead and tell it. That's right. That, honestly, that's it. That really is it. Because you can have anything you want. So I love it. I love it. So how can people get in touch with you? How can people buy your book? What do people need to do?
You can always hit me on Instagram. It's Dr. Marck. I got the fully loaded version of Mark. So Dr. Marck _Abraham, ABRAHAM. You can email me, MEA Consultants, LLC @gmail.com. My book, if you just Google Dr. Marck Abraham, What Success Looks Like, it's all over it's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can get it at Roman and Littlefield. That's the publisher. Shout out to them for giving me an opportunity. And pick it up, and I'm available. You can call me, talk to me anytime. I'm easy going.
Love it. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Such jewels, such wisdom. I really appreciate your time. And yes, we getting it together. It's an inside job. That's what I got from this. This is an inside job. So yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.